Hello and welcome to the TMC Newsroom. We are at Interrupt 2011. We're in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's day 3 of the show. On our program is Dan Aronson, and he is the North American Sales Manager for Sagemcom. And I forgot to mention, my name is Rich Tehrani. Thanks for watching. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich.
Your company, leading provider of IP fax solutions based in Montreal.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And I was hoping we could talk a little bit about the world of IP fax and why is it growing in 2011?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that faxing, there have been so many different technologies that were supposedly going to put fax to bed, and yet fax is growing at a fairly steady rate. And IP fax is really growing for a couple different reasons. The biggest of which is the transition from traditional TDM phone systems to IP, to voice over IP. Because traditional faxing does not work within a voice over IP world, because QoS issues that you and I can tolerate as a voice, if there's a couple of packets lost, our brains kind of fill it in, but in a fax world that kills a fax transmission. So we came to market in 2002 with our fax over IP product, and it's been growing very steadily ever since. And
I wasn't that surprised, but during the housing boom, I know that you saw a surge of business also because of all the refinancing and mortgaging and things like that people were doing. I mean, I know that I think I've refinanced more than once, and every time you get something like 30, 40, 50 sheets, and you've got to read them, fill them out, and then fax them all back. So I mean, that's right.
No, exactly, and that's actually just a drop in the bucket. We have a lot of customers that are mortgage underwriters, and by the time a mortgage file at an underwriter is completed, it's usually between 150 and 200 pages, and a good 95% of that they're receiving by fax.
So, and there have been some challenges with, like you mentioned, with traditional fax over IP communications connections and VoIP connections. So we're getting past that slowly. It's still a challenge, right? For some companies? Yeah,
for some companies it is, and really it's a matter of in the planning phases when people are doing a TDM to VoIP transition, fax is just something that's forgotten about. And somebody somewhere down the road goes, hey, what do we do about fax? And a lot of times the answers come back we'll just keep POTS lines and attach and run them into fax machines. And that's very expensive and really doesn't leverage the voice over IP infrastructure investments that they're making, which are obviously significant.
It's worth pointing out that when you're going to unified communications, you shouldn't forget about fax. No, that's part of the package.
Exactly. We had a whole marketing campaign several years ago, can you see what's missing? UC being unified communications. Right. And fax is that piece that is typically missing from those plans.
So it seems that basically fax traffic is now, it's picking up, or is the growth in the market right now because of the economy and moving to IP? Is that the primary driver, or is there also more people faxing than there were?
Well, faxing as a whole is actually slightly dropping off.
Even with the economy picking up, it's the same thing?
Yeah, it is, but because the more FYI stuff is obviously going to email, instant messaging, and other types of...
Scanning too. I think the copiers being able to scan to email is one of the things.
Exactly. But what's left over as far as fax traffic is what it boils down to. It ends up being the most mission critical documents that any company is dealing with. So, POs, contracts, mortgages, those kinds of things, all those legal type documents, they have to have them, and it has to be faxed.
Okay, so who's your target audience? Who should be calling you right now after watching this video?
Well, okay, so in general, obviously anybody who's transitioning from TDM to VoIP, that's obviously, they need to, as you pointed out, consider fax in that transition. Other than that, it's people who are using large numbers of fax machines still, the traditional fax machines or the MFPs with fax kits. Just spoke to a college a second ago. They have 118 fax machines, each with a POTS line plugged in. And they asked me, well, how can you help me? And I said, well, real simple, is those fax machines are placed for convenience. But the other side of that is that they're hardly ever used. They may be used 2 or 3 times a day. So I've got a $25 POTS line being used 3 times a day. With a fax server, I said, we can use those as scanning to the fax server, consolidate, and then go down to probably 10 fax lines. Right. So I can save him, 108 times $25 a month in fax lines. So we can do great things as far as ROI and as far as saving people a lot of money.
fantastic. That sounds like a great bottom line. It's all about saving money nowadays,
Absolutely.
right? And rapid ROI. So thanks for being on the program.
Thank you, Rich.